My name is Terry Hilsberg. The person who was going to be the MC had to go to Beijing to look after her grandfather, so she will not be hosting it. So I'm the MC, and we will get going now. The first thing is, in terms of the facilities here, the toilets are out there and to the left, if you haven't been here before. Toilets are out there and to the left. The second thing is that there are two, if we have a fire, follow the person in the white helmet, and it's the tall guy over there. And there are two exits, one exit over there and one at the back of the main room. So hopefully we won't have that problem. So first thing I'd like to do is to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and to pay my respects to their elders, both past, present and future. And for those who are from China, this is in recognition of our First Nation people. A couple of other small advertisements is that this event is being facilitated or supported by these groups, and we also have one other supporter. We have some very good wine at the end of this meetup, paid for by a company from Adelaide who are part of this whole thing that we're talking about today. The reason that we're here is, of course, that there is a 200-person strong delegation from China, from Guangdong province, down in Australia this week for meetings on tomorrow and Friday, celebrating the 40th year of the relationship between Guangdong province in China and New South Wales. And so that's the purpose why we're here and why there's so many people on the Chinese delegation. So, we're running about 15 minutes late, so let's get into it. And firstly, what I'd like to do is to ask Mr. Brad Chan, who is the chairman, who is the founder of Haymarket HQ, to explain what this place is and what we're trying to do here. So, Brad.
Thanks, Terry, and I also acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and pay my respects to the elders past and present. Given that we are 15 minutes late, I'm going to try and make this shorter than I would normally. Really just welcoming you all here today. Hands up if you haven't been here before. Okay, maybe half of you, so welcome, and welcome back to those that have been here before. For those of you who may not be aware, Haymarket HQ started as a business with a social purpose just over 3 years ago, so time has really flown. What originally started as an idea to help grow startups into markets in Asia has since developed into, from my perspective, a thriving business community, a global network of Asia-capable entrepreneurs, and a central point for ideas and connections into Asia. So at Haymarket HQ, we run things like China market entry programs. We act as a landing pad in partnership with the City of Sydney, and we continue to promote many opportunities between our countries. Also, being located directly above a karaoke bar wasn't planned, but I have to admit it's where a number of deals have been made. To the delegates from Guangdong, a special welcome to you all. While I was born in Australia, my great-grandfather was born in Guangzhou in 1888, and he left China to Papua New Guinea at the age of 14 in search of a better life and opportunity. These days, there are endless opportunities in China, as there are in Australia, and it's great to see how much China has prospered over the years. By the way, my great-grandfather did go back to Guangzhou when he was 20 to get married. So a pretty girl was one opportunity he knew he had to go back to China for. Anyway, I hope you all find your time here fruitful and informative, and welcome again. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Matt Symons to come forward and talk a little bit about the blockchain. I've known Matt for 20 years, and we did a startup together about 20 years ago, and that's one of 4 startups that Matt's done. The most recent one he just recently sold, I believe. But one he's probably most known for in the Australian market is he was one of the founders of Society One, which was backed by Westpac Bank. It is Australia's largest peer-to-peer lending company. And peer-to-peer lending in Australia is okay. It's not frowned upon as much perhaps as in China. So Matt is also on the Commonwealth Government Treasurer's Financial Advisory Committee and is a member of the Blockchain Standards Committee of Standards Australia. So Matt, we'd like you to talk a little bit about regulation of blockchain in Australia.
Well, thank you, Terry, and thanks to all of you for coming along, including from China. So I wanted to talk to you quickly about my perspective on the opportunity that blockchain represents for particularly financial services and fintech oriented businesses. I think that's one of a number of viable use cases for blockchain. Quick bit of history, as Terry said, I'm a sort of startup guy. I like building things. I've built 5 businesses and been lucky enough to sell them to large corporates. And some of the time when you sell a company to a large corporate that started as a little startup, you can compare your experience as a startup, where you can control your own infrastructure, you can control your operating model, and then you go and get sold to a company like Accenture, which has 500,000 people, and you can't really control anything. And it's just an interesting contrast. And in my time, both in little companies and big companies, I felt that we needed a new paradigm for technology that would enable more innovation, more accountability, and do so in a distributed way, where Amazon Web Services wasn't, for example, the center of every cloud project everywhere in the world. So these things got me interested in the idea of distributed systems, and particularly decentralization, which is obviously a core theme for blockchain. Now, just quickly, in Australia, I'm lucky enough to sit on the Treasurer's Fintech Advisory Committee. That's actually set up by the current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison. He's very interested in innovation, particularly in the fintech area. His personal passion is the long-held hope for many Australians that we'll finally have some viable competition to our big banks. Anyone who lives here knows we have 4 wonderfully large, strong banks and a whole lot of little challengers trying to compete. So the government has been very supportive. To that end, they have supported the creation of exchanges. There's a number of crypto exchanges that run in Australia, a number of them well regarded and growing quite fast. They've supported a whole series of blockchain-based businesses setting up in Australia. And in the financial services sector, the government's made clear that if you want to enable financial products on a platform that includes blockchain, then you're quite welcome to do so. You just need to have what's called an Australian Financial Services Licence, which is contemplated by the Corporations Act and regulated by ASIC. And so there's a number of Australian businesses, some of them offering wallet services in the crypto space, a number of them offering actually blockchain technologies. Some people like BK building very clever, innovative things in insurance on top of blockchain backbones that really are very encouraged and supported by the local regulatory regime. And in fact, I think there's been great outreach by the Australian government to support those businesses. So Australia's very friendly to blockchain businesses. You'll be hearing later about a couple of interesting projects that are actually trying to help Australian exporters use blockchain to expand into China, and how that can help with issues like provenance, how it can help with financing. And Hongbo, I think, is going to talk to you a little bit about some of those ideas later. It's a very interesting area. And of course, the idea that you could provide better finance options than traditional banks is something I think Terry's going to talk about a bit later on in regard to, can you use accurate, immutable, always true revenue estimates from a business that's put on the blockchain as a basis to drive funding for those businesses.
Matt,
yes?
I'm slightly stupid, but can you tell me what is Fintech blockchain? Is it just a software, or what is it?
No, that's not a stupid question. I perhaps should have explained that. So blockchain is an idea, first of all, that came out of this white paper by one or multiple people called Satoshi, 2007, It had a lot of interesting things in it. One thing that it said is, I can imagine a ledger that's not maintained by one counterparty, which is sort of always what we've had in human history. We've had one trusted party, typically the government or a bank or a trusted, independent actuary or custodian of an asset, maintaining the record of exactly what happened in what order. And that's the basis on which like a share registry has always worked, or some sort of basic exchange reconciliation model. Now, this Satoshi people created the idea that you can conjure a ledger magically out of the process of having a set of miners compete to solve a cryptographic puzzle, which basically just means hash away to come up with a consensus that leads to the update of that blockchain. So basically the point is, no one person is controlling the updates to the ledger. And that's the revolution in blockchain. There's not one person you have to rely on. There's not a bank, there's not a government. There's a network of what are called nodes that are mining away to win a puzzle, but what they're really doing is they're creating an ordered upgrade to the ledger without any one person being able to stop it. So that's the idea. Quite mind-blowing. Probably others in the room could explain it better, but the core point is Fintech is desperate to operate without a bank sitting behind it as the payment gateway, as the backbone infrastructure, as the trusted party. It's desperate to not have to host all of its business logic with Jeff Bezos's wonderful Amazon machine, because that's sort of the default that everyone goes to, right? The idea is, are there other systems and platforms that we could use to provide those services? And that's where I think blockchain solves a fintech problem, which is you can't really be the upstart trying to punch above your weight if you have to leverage a whole lot of big guys' infrastructure and credibility to get your first set of customers. Sorry, that might be a long-winded explanation. Anyway, so in closing, because I think, Terry, time is short, we in Australia believe that we have a blockchain ecosystem that is evolving and progressing very well. And what we're excitedly waiting for is the next generation of blockchain protocols. So there's a next generation of blockchain protocols. They're often called Web3 technologies. And I'm personally involved in a number of these, and I'm very excited because they have the potential to take what I just described and mean that you don't have to see any of that. That just works in the background. The developer who wants to build a piece of business logic can access something like a business I'm involved in, so I have a bias, but that a protocol that a company called Dfinity is trying to develop, DFINITY, which is basically a distributed cloud service. And they're trying to say that we can take this idea that no one person can control anything, and we'll build a protocol, and that essentially becomes a world computer. Now, I think that those sort of ideas start to make blockchain less about Bitcoin prices and crypto trading, and much more about something that's actually relevant to all of us who are trying to imagine new infrastructure models. So maybe I should leave it there unless there are any questions.
Anyone got any questions of Matt? Oh, Symons. Yeah. The question for the recording is, does Matt hold any Bitcoins or altcoins himself?
Fortunately, I decided, not because I had a strong investment philosophy, but because I thought if you're going to learn about something, you should have some skin in the game. I have been exposed to all the wild, wonderful gyrations of crypto for a long time. You know, Mt. Gox, accounts getting hacked, losing everything, starting again. You know, all of the kind of peak optimism, valley of despair experience that most crypto investors have. I've had all of those.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Okay, my name is Terry Hilsberg, as I mentioned to you earlier. I'm a resident of Haymarket HQ, and I sort of form a role here of trying to give people sound venture capital type investment advice. And I should say I first went into venture capital in 1987 and have raised several funds, and I've also started 6 companies myself. I haven't had quite the stellar record that Matt Symons had. Unfortunately, only 4 out of my 6 worked, whereas he's been much better and managed to make 5 out of 5 work. To answer your question as well, yes, I do hold Bitcoin and Dfinity and a few other core. I've got a core portfolio of crypto. And I got involved in the crypto space because my son was making too much money at it. And I was wondering why he and his mates had literally left university for a year to go and then play in the crypto space. And so I got into it through that mechanism. And then a colleague of mine, Xu Hongbo, who's speaking, he also got into it, and we sort of joined up. So what I'm going to talk about is the case in cross-border e-commerce for, what do I do? How do I make this work?
Give it to a young person.
Working? Okay. Sorry, folks. Okay, right. Now we've got it. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about is the sort of scene setting and how we, at Haymarket HQ, we got involved in thinking about cross-border fintech solutions for small businesses. And so, okay. So the problem we're dealing with is that the cross-border performance of Australian SMEs is not particularly good in international trade. And I want to talk about some of the issues that come up, and including provenance issues, in particular in China, and then talk about the issue of the gap in financing for small exporters, particularly into China, and lastly talk about a thing which Hongbo will talk more about, which is a thing called free trade chain. So, what's the background of SMEs in Australia in Australia to China trade? Obviously, e-commerce is growing very rapidly worldwide, and in particular in China. In Australia, we're still down more at the 10% mark of transactions being in e-commerce, but in China now you're starting to get up to more like the 20% mark. And so, but the context which is important for Australia is that even though the Chinese economy is only growing at around 6% per annum, if you believe the official statistics, many of the markets for importing things from foreigners, and including small companies, are growing at 15% per annum. And that's the important context, that if you look thinking of things like fine foods or Australian agricultural products, that's growing much quicker than the overall rate of the Chinese economy. To give you an example, in 1 year, in the most recent year, agricultural products from Australia into China grew by $1.8 billion US. That's the same size as the entire company Atlassian. And most of that was coming from small to medium-sized enterprises. And that is quite dramatic. And therefore, those people who claim we should all become a high-tech country, we're forgetting the fact that our SMEs are selling very practical things into China. And we have a lot of exporters who, SMEs who are exporters. There's about 30,000 of them, but their average transaction size is down, sort of in the low thousands of dollars. And this sort of is what we have to change. Now, here at Haymarket HQ earlier this year, we decided to try and do something about getting more SMEs ready to go into the Chinese market. And we formed a thing called the China Canvas Challenge, which thankfully Alibaba, Australia Post, and a few other people supported us on. And so we ran a program that we were quite amazed. We promised the sponsors 25 companies would apply. But in fact, 760 SMEs applied to join this program. And we admitted 400, and 200 completed it. Now, this was quite extraordinary, given there's probably only 20,000 to 30,000 people who are in the export game in Australia. And if we looked at the industries they came from, they were generally very small, like 1 to 9 employees, fairly turnover of around $1 million, and there are all sorts of different industries. But looking, typically the companies in this challenge that came with things like processed foodstuffs, such as muesli bars. I didn't know before this challenge how many muesli bar makers Australia had, but we've got at least 5 who are wanting to export to China or who are exporting to China. In addition, our wine, as you probably know, the big wine exporters are very successful in China, such as Treasury Estate, but there's like 500 small ones who are also trying to enter the Chinese market with varying degrees of success. And agricultural products, so for instance, lobster farmers or fish or things like that. And medical products and devices, like a simple thing, incontinence pads for old people. There is quite a successful new Sydney-based company that is exporting incontinence pads to China. And things like in pharmaceuticals and supplements, we all know about milk powder, but very few people know that for postmenopausal women, there are some products which Australia does very well in and are selling well in China. So, and lastly, fashion and clothing. But we had basically 400 companies that do all these sorts of things. Most of them are unique, but low tech. So, but what common issues arose in working with these 400 companies? And there were 3 main ones that I'll come to. Firstly is the issue of their margin structure and how dependent they are upon their distribution structure in China. So negotiating the margins and working with the distribution structure in China is probably the number one problem. The second issue is provenance issues. For instance, you have, I've literally sat with a lobster exporter who sends a lobster that weighs 1 kilo, and by the time it gets to the restaurant in Beijing, it weighs 2 kilos. And somebody has injected some saline solution along the way. And or wine exporters who've had the contents of their bottles changed. And then lastly, that builds on these 2 problems is the lack of trade finance, and I'll come back to that. So those are the sort of typical problems in retailing in China, and the whole thing is that in between the producer and the consumer, there's a whole bunch of people in a multi-layered structure. And the interesting problem we face using sort of blockchain or supply chain technology is if you just try and automate the existing system, then you're just probably automating inefficiency. And what the blockchain technology gives the potential for is to get rid of most of the people in the middle. Now, that's yet to be proven, but it is the potential. So, what are then, examining these issues in a little more detail, what are the supply chain provenance issues? And we know most of them. They're things like counterfeiting, adulteration of the product, authentication it's what you're purchasing is what you paid for. And then all of this comes down to the issue of trust. And the classic ones you see like Abidas rather than Adidas. So, in Australia, lots of people have been thinking about using the blockchain to address these issues. And there are 16 industries which have various blockchain solutions. Literally 16 different industries have a blockchain solution underway. And these industries range from commodity industries where the blockchain implementation has already been done, such as wheat. The very famous company is AgriDigital, who have put on the blockchain around 15 to 20% of Australia's entire wheat production, through to the sugar industry. So commodities are a place where people are investing in blockchain solutions for the Chinese market. But it also is in other areas, such as in food, in processed food, in pharmaceuticals, anywhere there is some form of provenance problem, but potentially in delivering the product to the consumer in China. And so these 16 companies that have been formed, or 16 projects that have been formed, the question is, who's financing them? Why? Now, many of them, particularly where they're in the more socialised industries in Australia, which is basically agriculture, the industry and government are paying for these solutions to be developed, and therefore they're going ahead pretty quickly. In other areas like fine foods or things that are where there's less government involvement, there are some private projects, but they're taking a lot longer to be implemented. And that's just because the industries aren't as well organised. So, for instance, if you are a beef producer in Australia, there is a very highly organised blockchain project that is being implemented. Whereas if you're in fine foods, the people trying to do it there, it's not well organised and will take far longer. So the thing I learnt when I looked at this and asked the question, why are there 16 projects? It comes down to they're usually based around a particular industry and the way things are paid for in that industry. And the second thing is they usually reflect the existing distribution structure in that industry. They don't change the distribution structure, at least when they start. Now, when they get really going though, they start to run into some interesting problems. So for instance, one of the companies, where is it? It's not there. Oh, Fresh Supply. No, it's not Fresh Supply. Where is it? Yeah, Two Hands, that company. The guy running that, he's a very experienced fisher person. And he is on about how to implement a blockchain solution in the lobster industry. And he spent a lot of time in China now. And the interesting thing about his experience is when he started, he was dealing with this problem of the lobster leaving at 1 kilo and being 2 kilo at the restaurant. And he thought, oh, well, I'll just put everything on the blockchain and it'll all fix itself. The problem was he then discovered that the people actually injecting the saline solution into the lobsters were his distributors. And therefore, the only way he could fix it was to change distribution in the industry. And that story is a story that I've seen across most of these projects. People start out with all sorts of complicated technology, generally trying to get rid of a provenance problem, but then they end up realising they have to change the distribution structure in order to get a decent result. So that then leads to another problem, which is the lack of end user engagement. In other words, often in all these blockchain solutions, you want the end user to provide you with some information. But why are they going to do that unless they've got incentive? So the next problem most of these projects have faced is how to set up the incentive structures to basically give information back to the people running the blockchain. And so there's a whole bunch of solutions you can use, and people are trying many of these particular solutions. But in the end, they're almost copying what's already a business model in China. There is a company in China that does some of this stuff already in a non-blockchain world. But this whole area of loyalty schemes or effectively paying the end user to give you information about the product and how it arrived is a major issue in nearly every project I've looked at.
Terry,
Yeah,
what about
yeah.
the KOLs?
The key opinion leaders, if they've got information and you can then, they're just trusted people. They don't actually say that lobster you consumed tonight was actually the weight that it had. So take the lobster example. Literally, when a lobster with that company I was mentioning arrives at the restaurant, the entire history of that lobster from when it was caught can be looked up on a mobile phone by the Chinese restaurant owner. And that particular, so they can say, oh, well, it left Melbourne at 1 kilo and there's 2 kilos or it is 1 kilo and it had these characteristics. It was caught on this date or that date and et cetera, et cetera. And the KOL thing doesn't really influence that. It's about whether what you pay for is what you got.
But for marketing?
Yeah, it's important for marketing, yeah, obviously, yeah. So that's the provenance issue. Then there's another issue that comes out of all this, which is the financing issue. And take this term, revenue-based financing. There is, around the world now, at the moment, in Australia for export finance, you remember I said there were 20 to 30,000 SMEs exporting from Australia. At the moment, according to the last annual report, only 249 transactions were subsidised to get export finance by the Australian government. In other words, the great majority of people had no access to subsidised export finance out of Australia. But even that costs about $175 million. Now, having said that though, the government body that does this, called Export Finance Australia, has in recent times started to do cash flow lending. They will lend against contracts. So if you can put in place a contract with a Chinese buyer, then you can obtain some export finance from this group, if it's available. Now, the problem with this though is there's not enough money available, and the contracts have not been automated, because for small businesses, they're too small to bother about. So if I'm selling $50,000 worth of a product into China from a small business in Sydney, it's not worth going to these people, because it would cost them more to administer the trade finance than what it's worth. Now, this is again where the blockchain can start to remedy this problem. So the Australian government has recently said that it is going to review this whole system, and I would suspect that there will be a blockchain-based system that emerges from this, based upon financing of, once you put in place a contract with a Chinese buyer, then have smart contracts automatically executing to get the money from China back to the person who provided the export finance. And that can be done down to as low as $1,000 or $10,000 of exports. And that will revolutionise the trade finance, or international trade financing. So I think this is a very big use case for blockchain. And so that type of system then is based upon what's called revenue-based financing facility. And this has sort of come out of the USA in the last 3 years. Revenue-based lenders who automatically execute smart contracts is a concept which has come around in the USA and also in blockchain implementations, and in my view is probably the future of small business finance. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so I'm about to end that the solution which we've been working at here at Haymarket HQ with a number of the SMEs who participate in our 3C competition is a thing we're calling free trade chain. And we're working with our friends from the Guangdong Digital Research Institute and from InnoChain regarding some trials of that. Now, we're not trying to replace those 16 projects in Australia, I should stress, because they are all organised around particular industries and eventually will do a good job in those industries. We're more wanting to implement what the Australians are doing in those 16 industries with the Chinese end and put in place a solution in China. And again, in blockchain terms, there's some technologies that can do that. So we will get there. So any questions?
Are we going to get the slides?
Yes, we'll put them up on the Haymarket HQ website. Everyone, apart from Matt, everyone's got slides, and we'll publish them. Okay?
Terry, has the government indicated when this simplified blockchain financing loan?
No, they have not committed to blockchain, I should stress, but they are committed to extending to small business. And they claim that will all be done in, that the review will take, I think it's 6 months, and then reality, you'll be talking about a couple of years. But I should stress that Export Finance Australia, as recently as 3 years ago, hardly did any small business lending. So they've completely changed their focus in 3 years to small business. And invariably what they're trying to do is solve two problems. One problem is to be able to support smaller transactions for SMEs in international marketplace, the one I spoke about. But the second problem is that they should also be able to take their $200 million and leverage it. In other words, not do all the lending themselves. At the moment, they're just acting like a bank. But there's a British model which gets about 10 to 1 leverage, whereby for every dollar that the government puts in, you can mobilise $10 from the marketplace. And in particular, can engage in what's called peer-to-peer lending marketplaces. Yeah.
Just an observation after the question.
Yeah.
I was in Canberra last week at Blockchain Australia.
Yeah.
Function with the executive Susan McDonald.
Yeah.
Responsible point leaders on this. And they had three key areas they were looking to initially focus on blockchain. One was KYC, liquidity between financial institutions and other things. Secondly, provenance issues, particularly for agricultural products.
Yeah.
And thirdly, increased efficiency of the back office of funds management businesses. And those three key areas are focuses to begin with.
Cool. Glad we have the same story. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Just in the provenance solution, which actors in that end-to-end supply chain are paying for, what's a commercial model?
There's different commercial models, obviously. One of the things that there's quite sophisticated solutions that involve RFID tags and all sorts of things, right? Now, those generally are for very complicated supply chains, and in the end, it all comes out of each party's margin along the way. But the sort of ones that have attracted me have been more ones that where something starts here and gets there, and somehow you incentivize the person at the other end to be wanting to participate. And so the sorts of models for incentivizing people have got to, there's obviously got to be a commercial gain for them. So if you want that restaurant to tell you that the lobster that arrived there was the same as the one here, you've probably got to pay them something. And that means you've probably got to give them some discount if they will supply you with information.
No, I understand. We're doing quite a bit of work with places like IBM and KPMG with their provenance solutions, and they've got this perennial issue that they've got great products, but no one's buying them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so what the gentleman's saying is that no one's buying the systems integrators solutions, and my view on this, having been in this now for about 6 months, is that they are ignoring the end user. In other words, they're doing everything in the middle, but ignoring the end user and giving them incentive to want to fix the problem. And the solutions that I've seen that work are all about revolutionising the distribution structure in the middle. See, most of those solutions do not change the distribution structure. And the ones I've seen that are working are changing the distribution structure. Yeah.
You've spoken about the end product or the end user and the platform to the end user. What about the SME itself? Because you need to be able to, the SME would have to be more technologically innovative,
right,
to be able to, meet up.
Yeah, Hongbo will talk a bit to this, as will our colleagues from the Guangdong Digital Research Institute. What you have to do in the Chinese market is you don't talk about blockchain. You just talk about a WeChat, a mini app. You have to make it simple at the user end. So the restaurant owner just wants to get into the WeChat mini app that tracks lobsters or tracks whatever, sugar or whatever.
Can I add one
sure.
comment to this gentleman's question? So I think technology is useless unless it's solving the real business problem. To the great amount of SMEs that don't need to understand what the bloody hell of blockchain is. It's just like electricity. You don't need to know how electricity can be generated and how to deliver it to your door. You just need to understand that electricity can be useful for your oven, to be useful for your fridge. The great technology, to the customer end, they don't need to understand how it's been done. They just need to understand this is useful.
So an SME's internal processes doesn't need to be changed.
They will need to capture data when the product. So, for instance, in the blockchain solutions in the fisheries industry, generally you use your mobile phone to take a picture of the fish when it comes out of the water, to give an example. So the cost of these systems, they're quite cheap actually, unless you get a big systems integrator to implement them. But most of the ones that I've seen work off some risk-based thing, namely they take a small percentage of the action, and then there'll be a fairly cheap implementation fee. I must stress I'm not in this business, so I'm not selling anything. All I'm saying is that the ones I've seen that are successful are quite modest and SMEs can afford it, and there's not much risk. But we can come back to that later. I'd like to now move on to our Chinese colleagues, because you've probably got more interest in what they're doing. Remember what I'm saying, in Australia we've got these sort of 16 different blockchain projects underway that are about provenance, but at the other end there's also a lot of action. And you need to forget about the fact that obviously in China there's various bans put on, ICOs and things like that. We're talking about businesses that actually use blockchain technology to solve business problems. So we've got two sets of colleagues here with us today who will talk about the work that they're doing at the China end, which eventually the Australian stuff will need to interface with. And firstly, I should mention, in the front row here, we've got Dr. Lee, who is the leader of the IoT delegation from the Guangdong Digital Research Institute. So he's leading that stream at the big conference tomorrow and on Friday. Now, his colleague, KK Swan, will now present, and he will present on the work that they have done in interfacing blockchains with consumer-friendly apps and things like that. So, KK, can you take it away?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, because my name is quite straightforward and easy to be pronounced, that's KK, because just use my initial, okay? And actually, I heard about it before. They relate to a lot of blockchain stuff. And actually, our platform also relates using actually blockchain as well. But I'm not talking into very technical detail, because actually we are very focused on business. In a simple word, people not focusing in the technology application, that they focus on how to apply the technology to gain benefit. Because at the end, just like the Professor Hui mentioned about, that we need to solve issues, solve the problem, okay? Also the purpose of our platform, because we don't want to do technical stuff and to do technical implementation. We need to solve business issue. And but because we actually is quite a long history, start from very simple beginning, that actually we are, our project, actually is a project based initiated by the Guangdong government, okay? Because at the very beginning, we just based on certain requirements from government. And then we do this platform to integrate all those logistic information. Because Guangdong is a big province that provides a lot of export goods and also import a lot as well. Therefore, we need a lot of operations, and also we need to streamline and automate those. Then we need to have an information platform to share those information. This is the why we need it and how we initiate. And you will see that this is it originated. Okay, there's no point. Okay, it's because of this is a plasma display. Okay, because this is actually our platform actually is initiated by various Guangdong important parties. That, for example, Digital Research Institute, leading by the Professor Dr. Lee, and also we have Guangdong Information Center and Guangdong in IoT Technology Public Support Center. There are a lot of related government provinces. Actually, our background is from government, I can say. Okay. And actually, we have certain characteristics that for this platform. First of all, this is a China central government directed organization. That means the government is one of our shareholder. And also, actually, because our background, we are able to do certain proposal to provincial government that to do certain assistance to facilitate import-export trade. Okay, therefore, we are a platform in technical sense. It is a technical platform, but it also is a trade facilitator to facilitate trade. Okay, not just provide the technology platform, but also to assist those companies to export goods from China to overseas and import overseas goods into China. And also we have, because our background, we inherit a lot of government relationship, and also we know each other very well, and also when we do certain facilitation, it can assist us to do more efficient. This also why we have a role, not just doing a technology platform, but also facilitator for trade. And nowadays in China, I think everyone heard about the Greater Bay Area. Everyone heard about this? Okay. In terms of Greater Bay Area, actually, is one of the portion. Actually, is one of the southern part of Guangdong province. Okay. And also, you will read some of the information that the Chinese government would like to make it for the world's #1 Bay Area. Right now, it's third. Okay, but this is very actually, I think maybe the 2 to 3 years time frame that we will move to #1, because other two Bay Area, that for example, the New York Bay Area and Tokyo Bay Area, they are quite saturated. But we just start. And also we have a big market that within China. And also we have actually a lot of supply chain experience that within this area, because all those cities also a lot of manufacturers, a lot of traders, and also that includes a lot of global experience that's based on Hong Kong. And this will bring the whole stuff. And because some of the role and responsibility already clear stay in the government policy, that for each city, they have very key role to work together to make it become #1 Bay Area. And because of this integration between cities and linked with global, we need platform. And we have 3 major tasks for this platform at this moment, but in our role and responsibility, actually it's bigger. Right now we focus on 3 things. First thing is ensure food safety. Food safety is a very big issue in China. Okay, I think everyone heard about a lot of issue for the milk, and a lot of, for example, meat, a lot of this kind of food safety issues. And also, I think everyone understood that China is a big market and growing, and also all those people in China, they want to eat better. This is very important. That means they require high quality food, not just to make ourselves, actually just to make ourselves not hungry. Okay, we need better food. And therefore, food safety is very key elements that we also involved with certain technology development that we're using blockchain. Therefore, because traceability is one of the important issues, that means to ensure that the food can be traceable. And also, this is also to be indicated at the origin. It's just like I think everyone concerned about. And also, this is a challenge that we're facing in the Australian suppliers. And the second part relates to import facilitation. A lot of trade documents that need to be in and out when you move the goods to government, to Chinese government. We need to do automation. Therefore, this part relates to document. We based on certain data exchange technologies. And also, this also connected to the food safety as well, because some of the government documents, they need to be linked back to the product itself to ensure the food is safe. And the last part is related to e-commerce platform, that to facilitate First of all, sourcing, and also facilitate the product move from global into China, and China product export to global. Okay, that's what we need to have e-commerce platform for everyone. Just like mentioned, actually is related to the mini apps. Okay, it's very popular in China. This is a very good channel to directly interact with our consumer, because it's very simple to use. Everyone in China, they have WeChat. Therefore, quite easier. If you want to go to that market, okay, therefore you need to have channel to use the WeChat mini apps. Of course, this is also one of our channel that nowadays we are doing. Besides this mini app, also, of course, we have web-based. But these three become our major tasks in this coming 1 to 2 years. And of course, we have some more things in the future we will be doing, because we are actually information platform that we do a lot of analytic that capability that can assist to do, for example, the index of the specific industry or specific area. There are so many stuff we can do, but we view these three tasks as a major task that in the coming months. And what are our values to everyone? First of all, to help to communicate with the China Custom and other departments when you go into the China market. Okay, because we are facilitator. We can facilitate the supply in overseas to export the goods into China. Okay. And of course, we will use the Greater Bay Area as a hub. Therefore, you can import to, for example, China via Greater Bay Area. Because we have some affiliated bonded warehouse can assist those kind of logistic issues. Okay. And also we will help to provide the track and trace process. Because I mentioned about the track and trace is one of the major function or functionality that need to be applied to those kind of, to realize those functionality that can recognized by Chinese government. And also we can help to build the strong market presence that in a very short time frame, because we already have certain channel that already run on certain existing mini apps and also certain web application that already in the pictures. Therefore, for every supplier, that if you want to go into the Chinese market, actually is ready to use. And this is also is very good stuff and easy to move into it. And also we have a quite strong support from certain famous trader, for example, Canton Fair and Chinese National Cereal and Oil and Foodstuff Import and Export Corporation. Those come with our partner. Therefore, this is already your actual potential customer, or maybe the key channel to China. And also we will provide the updated market information, because we are a platform that can provide a lot of information, because those throughout our platform that we can do it analytic. And for the global supply chain, it's not that straightforward, because they involve several parties. This is also why we need to understand that how to link this process together, and those processes need to be traceable. Okay, and this is also involves certain technology. Blockchain is one of the key technologies to ensure that it should be no one and change, but not only blockchain technology, because they focus on information. We also link with those physical goods. Okay, this is also important, because information is real, it's generous, but the goods is fake. Then this is a problem. How you link it together? We have certain technology can bind the physical goods and information together, and can link those kind of different parties together. And this is certain scenario that in the food safety we using we can use simple barcode. And also we can use very sophisticated RFID technologies. It really depends on your business model and or your business value of the product. Because usually if your product is not that expensive, then barcode already good enough. But if you are, the product is very high value, and you need a very sophisticated method, you can use RFID. Therefore, it's a various different kind of degrees of implementation that relate to what the result you want to achieve. It's totally based on your business scenario. And our solution characteristic is, first of all, easy to operate. Just like you can use smartphone, because in China, smartphone is very, very popular. I'm not quite sure in Australia it's very popular. Yes, that's good. Because smartphone becomes, right now, you can use it for example, to communicate with your friends. You can buy things, also do check and trace your stuff that you already purchased. And also you can introduce the new product to your friends and get bonus point. There are a lot of use application. Therefore, smartphone is one of our key channel or devices that we need to be incorporating. That's why we focus on mini apps, because already it's almost every Chinese people in their smartphone, they will have WeChat. We have WeChat, and then mini apps is just come with.
Okay.
Yes.
Shanghai's got the economic free trade zone. Does Guangzhou have the same?
Free trade zone 有冇？Yeah, for import. The import export. Yeah. Shanghai is import. Shanghai is export. Import. Okay. Shanghai is import. Guangdong is import and export. But Shanghai, I heard about this, is not that good now. Some problem. And also right now, the focus right now is shifting to Guangdong province, because Greater Bay Area, because this is a key Chinese government objective they need to fulfill within these few years. And they have a lot of policy to assist it. And also, we have already embedded in a high reliability and scalability. That's very based on cloud computing, but everyone will mention the cloud computing. Okay, but I think most important how you can, because for the user, it's just a confidence that if we're using cloud, that means they don't worry about the scalability. And also we have a high trustworthiness technology blockchain that in a simple word, how we use another way to describe a blockchain. Blockchain is just something like a database, but very secure database. You can't change it. Normal database you can change. But you store the stuff into a blockchain database, you can't change. Okay, and this is one of the importance that therefore everyone, if you update, you can't change the record. Nobody can change it. Okay, this is very important. Okay, no matter the information is correct or not correct, but they keep it. Then we can use certain artificial intelligence way to filter. Then we will know which one will be possible, have certain risk, and some is not that high risk. Okay, because always we mention about this traceability is related to risk management. And also we have expandability to IoT technologies, because barcode is one of the IoT technology, RFID is another one. And also during the whole process for high quality food, usually we will use the temperature monitoring that need to have certain sensor. And sometimes we also link with certain video that we need to analyze the video. That, for example, if something wrong, then we can retrieve all the related video. And also we have a global interoperability because our platform basically based on global standard. This is also the foundation to interconnected with the ability of global players. And for traceability operation that we mentioned about, we can based on barcode or RFID, and also we will via smartphone. And we use blockchain to protect the data. And also, using barcode, we have certain way to do certain, because nowadays we have certain secure barcode technology using microprinting technology. You can't copy. Okay, there's several ways. Okay, and also depends on your requirement. Some is more lower cost. Okay, some is more expensive. It really depends on the functionality that you require. This is RFID. Then we move to another, originally I want to do a demonstration, but I think it may not be suitable. Therefore, but it can be demo. But right now I do some screen cap. But before I do it, I just would like to actually make sure that everyone understand, because the technology is not because of technology. I always mentioned, and right now we have all certain orders and delivery methods that offer to all those suppliers. For the supplier, because for our platform, just like we have a module is called EMO, okay? It's just like e-commerce platform. The consumer in China can make order to the EMO and then to pass the order to direct to the supplier, maybe in Australia. And after they receive it, you can use your Australian the logistic provider to send directly back. This is one of the model, but you understand that for this kind of cycle to be more expensive and also the time consuming, maybe use 2 days to China, okay? And another way, this second way, because all three ways can be supported in our platform. Second way, we use a bonded warehouse. Therefore, before the EMO receives the order, actually the supplier will already estimate how many items will be sold in China, or our platform can give them certain indication. And then the supplier can pack individually, one by one, and then put into the box, and then send to the bonded warehouse in China. And when the consumer make the order through the EMO, and the EMO will send the order to the bonded warehouse, and the bonded warehouse will request the local, the logistics company to deliver the product. It's not that time consuming because already in China, okay? But because from from supply originally, you already make it in the individual pack, and each pack already have serial number, and the information already passed to the blockchain database. Therefore, it can be traceable, okay? And the last way is via the processing center inside the bonded warehouse. Therefore, the supplier can just, for example, if it is for example, a brief, they can send the whole portion of the cow or cattle to the processing center in the bonded warehouse. That's been already in China. Okay, and based on the requirements, then they will, according to the consumer, or even can be not necessarily consumer, maybe a restaurant, based on their requirement to process the product, maybe meat, maybe some other stuff. But after they do it, we will follow our process with certain practices that need to be ensured that those stuff during the project will not be add some other stuff inside. And also we will make certain certification and then using the logistic company and directly send to the consumer. This is a 3 different type of delivery way, order delivery way. And for the overseas supplier, you can pick anyone. You can go direct, or use bundle warehouse in the middle, or even the process in China. Okay, this is 3 different ways. And the consumer also can, based on their preference, to choose, because we have indication. This is 3 different types. If the consumer only have high confidence for type 1, then pick type 1, more expensive and more lengthy time. For the last one, it's more flexible and shorten time, and also lower cost. It's up to their confidence level, up to their own choices. Okay, this is very important because somebody they really want directly from the origin, for example, from Australia. And this is already have certain mini apps. They already in the pipeline make order. Actually, I can do demonstration already in my mobile phone. If you have interest, I can do the demo. And also because first of all, the consumer should have benefit. Because for example, they already detailed information, and also they can have certain certification or certificate of origin, and also have traceability, and also we can confirm those receiving, can get the feedback loop back. Okay. And this is maybe a little bit technical, certain infrastructures that relate to how we relate. Right now we are using the InnoChain SDK for the blockchain integration. And also there are different parties that we will scan and read using simple barcode. Okay. Of course, we can add more secure RFID into it. It depends on the case.
KK,
Yes,
you guys have invented the blockchain, haven't you? Got the blockchain.
we use it. We're not invented because of somebody already invented.
So it's your system.
Yes, we will use it because this is an open.
Is it a government system or is it a private?
Actually, this is offered by our platform. Our platform is partially owned by government.
Our blockchain itself is an open standard.
Yeah, open standard. Everyone can do it. Okay, it's a technology element, you can say.
It's just like internet. It doesn't belong to any government.
Yes, not belong to anyone.
Okay, just a question on the meat. I've got a company in Australia. It's taken forever to get the Chinese people to come out and license. Here is the problem. To get the meat to go to China. And he said that Chinese department's pathetic, you know.
Yeah.
Ta-
Could we move on, mate?
Sorry.
That's not the topic.
Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, maybe we can have some discussion
Yeah,
later because I should be
let's
quick
get this
guy
over with, so we
overrun. Okay, and also this is different. Actually the barcode that indicate, and this is certain also prepare certain demo, but we do some screen cap first. This is how to input the data because this is important. It's convenient for everyone to input data, but unfortunately the display the interface right now is Chinese. But it's okay. We can have another version for English. Input the information. And secondly, scan the barcode. Actually, we have certain stuff they're already doing because this is one of our clients. They import the Australian beef. Okay, this is their packaging. And also they already have the barcode that to be scanned and traced. Okay. And we already have a very simple application to scan it and then to ensure that it can be, for example, different we call report. And for the consumer, actually they use this and that using the app or maybe just normal barcode scanner, they can read by the mobile phone. And then we direct to the page of the specific product because this is already stabilized. Therefore, each piece of, for example, root take different number. Okay, therefore it can be traceable, and also we can have certain root take that to indicate this is originated from Australia, something like this. Okay, thank you. And
Thank you,
will
KK.
run-
So has anyone got a question for KK?
KK, I have a question.
Yes,
I saw two questions.
yes.
The first question is, in terms of provenance, all of the actors in that supply chain would need to be participants in that end-to-end supply chain.
Yes.
Otherwise, the provenance is lost.
Yes, totally correct.
How do you either incentivize or compel, I don't know what the model is, for all of the actors to participate?
Okay, sometimes because usually you want somebody to do it, just two ways. One is push, okay, another make attraction. Okay, usually, for example, if I'm the supplier or maybe I am the importer, we need to define who are the key driver of the whole supply chain. After you determine it, okay, this should be a strong driver. Because not every supply chain can do it. Unless your supply chain have a very strong driver, then you can do it. Not every supply chain can do it.
Okay, is this, at what stage is this product? Is it a prototype or proof of concept or is it in production?
I can say part of it already in production. Yes, but some is in some of the proof of concept. But it's ready to use.
Okay, and sorry, one quick last question. I saw a lot of screens there for data entry.
Yes.
Is there GS1 shipping standard automated interfaces with ERP systems to do away with
Okay.
interfaces?
Actually, this is a technical question. Okay, it's not difficult, but most important thing is because for GS1 database you need to do subscription. Yeah, this is the most important thing, and also because I'm quite familiar with GS1 system.
Can we take this up afterwards,
Yeah,
please?
yeah, okay.
Okay. So thank you very much, KK.
Yes,
Thank you. And Oliver Jung, where are you? Oliver Jung?
I'm here.
G'day. So Oliver is from Aliyun, Alibaba Cloud, and Alibaba is a strong supporter of Haymarket Q, but most importantly in this context, in fact, the solution you just saw uses their hosting services, and the one you're about to see from Professor Xu Hongbo also uses their services. So we thought we'd invite Aliyun to talk about their blockchain solutions, because it's very relevant between Australia and China.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. My name is Oliver. I come from Alibaba Sydney local team. So we are a service provider in the infrastructure. So we've heard all these amazing blockchain solutions. At the end of the day, these solutions needs to run on somewhere. So our friend KK, their solution runs on what we're going to talk about on this platform. So in the first slides, it's a bit slightly technical. I promise I'll go through them very quickly. And then next, so 75% of the PPT is going to talk about the examples, use cases, effects, and why we're using blockchain. So what we offer here is blockchain as service. So in high level, what we're talking about is combine the capability of the cloud and the blockchain technology together and make it as a service. Because to be honest, blockchain, to set it up as a small to medium business, it's very complicated. You're going to have to hire the right guy, and he better or she better knows everything about the full stack. It's not just the chain itself. It also has infrastructure, networking, storage, data, everything. So in our effort, we're trying to make it as simple as possible. And our service is quite compelling. So Banna has ranked us the top level provider among the others. So the name is quite small, but all the usual suspects. I'm not going to read them out because. All right, blockchain. Where can we use it? So in this, we separate them into multiple levels. On the top level, obviously, is the application level, where our friends previously has talked about the various applications, finance, retail, local services. And I'm going to show more details on that. And in the middle layer, this is where your blockchain programmers will build, like the ERP integration is in the second layer. And then the various contracts, various trust chains. And then we operate on this layer. So we provide a backbone for these applications, for this middleware and the applications to run on. And the bottom layer will also provide slices, just the basic compute, CPU, RAM, and storage networking. Hopefully that makes sense. Our core engines. So there are three types of blockchain engines. This page is the most technical one. There won't be anything like this anymore. So I'm going to quickly explain why we offer three engines. Hyperledger. It's a very well-known. It's probably the most well-known engine. It's open source, so everyone can see what's inside. There is no tricky stuff, no bad code in it. Everyone can see it, and it's very standard. It pretty much sets the standard for blockchain. So Ant Blockchain is built by Ant Financial. It's a part of Alibaba Group. So the key differentiation is it has very high throughput. So if because of the nature of what Alibaba and does requires a lot of people click on the product, try to access it at the same time. That's why the throughput is the key differentiation. Ethereum, this is very, pretty much all the SMEs are using Ethereum because everyone knows the coin, so it uses similar engine. Just very, very good ecosystem support. You can easily find plugins. You can easily find your partners, your alliance chains that using the same protocol. So it's very easy to join the chain, to create new chain, and to do applications cross-chain. All right, now let's start looking at what Alibaba has done. using this technology. So this is a BU called World First. It's a part of Alibaba. They do the cross-border remittance. They use blockchain to transfer money cross-border. So Gcash is also a Alibaba wallet. They transfer cross-border between Hong Kong and Philippines and took 3 seconds, and over the chain without the bank settling in between. So save cost, save time, and much easier. And this one is Tmall. At the end, I'm going to talk about, I spend probably 5 minutes talk about end traceability as a service. This is very similar to that. So Tmall has its own traceability, and what's relevant in Australia is, I don't think the name has, here. So Fonterra from New Zealand and Blackmore was the participant. Don't worry too much about this graph. I'm going to explain in a different way. This one is quite interesting. So the doctor and the pharmacy. The patient goes to see the doctor, and doctor prescribes from their online clinic. So there's a record here. And then the clinic will sync the prescription with the pharmacy. And normally, our current GP system stops here. GP doesn't know whether you have gone to buy the prescribed medicine and how many times maybe you made a copy of the prescription, or somehow you used it at different locations. You buy it multiple times. In this case, as soon as the patient bought the medicine, doctor knows it straight away. And there is no way you try to use the same prescription to buy multiple times from the same place or multiple places. So this is what the use case in medicine. And there are a lot more use cases. So all these small words means Alibaba has done a project in it. But I think what's relevant to the audience here is the category. You know, cross-border remittance, in legal, supply chain, charity, product provenance, public services. Okay, now this one, I'm going to spend 5 minutes to talk about the ANTS project. This is called Traceability as a Service, which runs on Alipay. If you don't know, Alipay is an e-wallet in China. So this is from last Double 11. Double 11 is like Black Friday in China. So during that event, 300 million products was listed on the chain and sold to the customer. Protected products from 120 countries from the world and about 70,000 brands. If there is no actual benefit, there is no reason to do any solution. So there were mainly 2 benefits. One is once the customer had the trust in the product is authentic, the negative review decreased 50%. Because traditionally, if it's a centralized model and you just sell the customer a milk powder, they might, even it's true, even it's real product, they might think it's fake and leave a bad comment. But through this, later on, we're going to show some actual images of the solution. They truly believe it, hence a lot less complaints. And then because they believe this is real, you're selling the good stuff, you're selling the real stuff, so they buy more. And that's the actual conversion increase. And very simple, just QR code or NFC, RFID, which our friends have covered. Now, this is the actual Alipay pages. This one is for demo purpose, so I'm going to point out a few interesting things. In this case, you have a can of tea in your hand, and you open up your Alipay, you scan the QR code on it, and then what's interesting in this red flag, sorry about the Chinese because it was for Chinese consumers, it says multiple verifications has been done, 97 times. So straight away you have a red alert. This is not authentic. Even the QR code is real. And then in certain cases, we can show you the locations the QR code has been checked. So if it's the first time, you know you can trust this. And then after this, it shows you the certificates, shows you where it was grown, shows you the factory, shows you the field it was on, and then the operation stuff. And then on this one, 2000 time check. So yeah, that's a demo. It shows you where it come from. So that's from France, and then go to UK, and then when on the plane, it's on the way to China. And this one is similar, but inside China. So this creates trust. Now I'm going to talk about, our previous friend has already talked about this. So the data flow in a traditional supply chain move from upstream to downstream, but the problem is someone might change the data. So for example, raw materials go to factory, factory go to logistic, then go to warehouse. Warehouse has no idea what the data truly was when the pallet left the factory. So if something was changing between, there's no way to find out. But the solution, so this one I'm gonna spend a few more seconds to talk about, is everybody from raw materials, producer, QA, auditor, distributor, logistics, retailer, everyone gets the same piece of information from the beginning to the end. If the lobster raw material producer say it's 1 kilo, from here, day one, it's caught, retailer knows about it. There's no way you can change it unless you get a different lobster, right? But that's human problem. That's the part between the keyboard and the screen. So from technology point of view, share of information, distribute of information, public ledger, multiple copies owned by multiple entities solve the trust issue and data sharing. And these are the examples. This is a RISE QR code. That's another QR code. I can't really see the word. This one is NFC. So this is the most expensive. It's a very famous wine in China, Wuliangye. So they all used this platform to do the traceability. Again, there is only one word in doing this to increase trust. So customer have a trusted data source, trusted entity, and trusted data. So trusted data source in here means Alipay, because you probably put a lot of money in Alipay already. You trust the app. So when Alipay tells you it's real, it probably is real. And then trusted entity. So on there you have trusted manufacturers, trusted platform provider, right? And tells you very authentic data, and hence they trust the result.
Hold on, what is that guaranteed when Alibaba says it's trusted?
Yes,
The product is guaranteed?
on this platform.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Oliver. Anybody got any questions with Oliver? Okay, thanks, Oliver. Okay, our last talk is from Professor Xu Hongbo. He is a venture capitalist from Shenzhen, and he and I have been working together for about 5 years on taking various technologies from Australia to China. And most recently, he has become involved in a major effort to extend the sort of provenance type technologies that we've been listening to into financial products and into the ability to change trade financing. So, Xu Hongbo, over to you.
Thanks, Terry. Hello, everyone. It's my great honor to share our experience on how technology can drive economic growth and can create more equal opportunity, and also to have a better world. So to give you guys a very quick brief introduction on who I am and what do I do before. So I actually come from a very strong technical background. I was in the original Java team. So any guys, if you are on tech background, you sure to know Java, right? So I was in the Java team in the global Sun Microsystems Global Java Development Center in 1996. And actually, I came to New Zealand first in 1992 and worked in the New Zealand Cloud Research Institute in neural computing, so which is the foundation for today's AI technologies. Before I come back to China, I worked overseas for 16 years, 8 countries, 11 cities. So travel a lot. And I come back in China, to put a long story short, I come back in China in 2008 and work as a professor in South China University of Technology. I don't think you heard that university, but they are kind of Stanford in China. 85% of the entrepreneurs from the Greater Bay Area, as Dr. K just explained, are graduates from my university. And then, so at that time, I also worked as the steering committee member for the Chinese Mega Innovation Project. But I always, want to work in the industry and to create value as an entrepreneur. So actually, I've been found 5 startups along the way, and also I've been working as an investor for the last 9 years. So over the last 9 years, we invested about 70, 80 projects, achieved more than 70% success rate, and which makes me the top 10 best performed investor in China nationwide. But I'm not here to brag how clever I am or how smart I am. I think the main reason that we can be so successful is to jump the fast speed train of China economic growth. Over the past 9 years, we only invest in one particular area, which is the cross-section of retail, the consumer market, and the internet technology. So that's the only area we invest, and that's why we can achieve on your portal, we can have multiple 100x or 50x kind of return. So why we want to invest into retail, into the consumer market? I think this is the reason is just very simple. This is because the fast growth market of the Chinese economics, especially the consumer market. To give you guys an example, can any of you take a guess on what kind of increase rate for a small silly fruit called avocado? I think you must all eat that fruit, right? Can you take a guess on what kind of increase rate for the last 10 years?
Increase in avocado consumption.
Yeah, to import, because the Chinese doesn't produce, we don't produce avocado, it's all import from overseas. Many from 3 regions. One is the Mediterranean, the other is Chile, and another one is Australia and New Zealand. Right? Yeah, the increase rate. Can anyone take a guess?
What, 80, 70%?
Yeah, from 2008 to 2018. 10, 12 times?
10 times, 1,000%.
Yeah. 10,000 times.
10,000 times.
In 2008, The total national import of avocado is 31 tons. In 2018, that's 45,000 tons. It's more than 10,000 tons. I mean, what kind of thing you can make for 10,000 tons? I think the other one is Bitcoin, right? Right. So my point is that the Chinese economics has far from saturated. And there are so many huge opportunities for the high-end food, the good, healthy product, the demand for the Chinese market, especially in the anticipation of what we call the middle class increase from the currently 100 million to about 600 to 700 million in the next 5 to 10 years time. So the opportunity is endless. The only thing is you have to try, you have to believe it and act on that. If we talk about the retail, especially the convergence of IoT, mobile payment, those kind of smart retail appliance. So I invest a company called F5 Future Store. That company, the operation it's the first in the world that actually use robotics to serve all the convenience stores. They can cook pizza. They can cook hamburger, Chinese dumpling. The operation cost is just 5% compared to 7-Eleven because they don't need to have any human labor service. They only need to have half an hour for a delivery person to deliver the goods at midnight, so for the last day. But if we look at just the vending machine, that is an example. In Japan, 1 million population, about 584,000 vending machine. In US, close to 300 million population, about 680, around that number, 1,000 vending machine. In China, we have 13 billion population, but we only have 400,000 vending machine. So we are only 0.3% compared to the Japanese market. Think about the number. Think about how much growth you can enjoy for the last 5 to 10 years. So the first message I want to say is that technology is the driving force for business revolution. We are in the, obviously, we are in the global economic downturn right now. It's a global economic downturn, right? But in the meantime, I think we are in the great time of the history for both business innovation and also the technology revolution. The AI, we call this ABCD. The AI, blockchain, cloud, and data will entirely change how business works. In the future, every business has to be data business. There's no exception on that. If you look at China, why China can enjoy such a big growth, and why China can actually export the internet paradigm, technology, and business model even to the US. Previously we had something called copy to China, right? But when I came to Los Angeles, when I came to Silicon Valley last year, there are so many US startups. They say, hey, Hongbo, this is WeChat in US. You know what I mean? Mobile payment is actually greatly reduce the fraction for the business. In China, we have more than 1 billion people that have mobile payment, which essentially China is comes to a cashless society. So in terms of retail, I just want to stress 2 important factors how technology will help the business. The first thing, with the blockchain, it creates, we call it, in the technology world, we call trustless, but which means we don't need to trust any middleman. We can create a much frictionless infrastructure for the liquidity of the asset. You know, financing SME is a global problem, right? But with a blockchain, we can turn your data into asset, increase the liquidity in the fraction of seconds. So this is a game changer. You don't have to come to the bank to go through the whole bloody silly process for the loan. Take your cash flow as your collateral rather than your house. That's what we do. And the investor can lend you money based on your real-time revenue. So I think I just go through the pitch very quickly, and we can discuss more. So what InnoChain we are doing is actually we create a new class of asset which is backed up by your real-time cash flow, by your real-time revenues. And typically, for any investors, if they want to lend money to you, the first thing they consider is a risk, right? If I lend money to you, whether you can pay it, whether you can repay it on time, that's the first thing, right? Whether you have the ability to repay my money back. And the second thing is the yield, how much return I can get. With the blockchain, with the InnoChain solution, we integrate your cash flow on the blockchain, so it makes your business performance non-repeatable. Nobody can change it. You cannot fake, you cannot tell a lie. Based upon that, the investor make a decision. That's number one. And number two, we make the liquidity. I mean, when I went to something, to any project, let's say I want to have my money back. I mean, I can't afford for this 5 years or 7 years or even 1 year. I want to use my money, the money urgently, right? What I can do. And previously there's no way to do that, but with tokens, with blockchain, you can actually trade your asset on the real time, on the exchange, and get the liquidity, get the exit of your project very quickly. So I won't go through the technical architecture, but only message I can tell all of you is that the technology is mature. We work with N-chain and blockchain, and we also work with WeChat. We also work with UnionPay. We work with all the most important, most predominant banks, payment provider in China. And secondly, extremely affordable. It's very, very cheap. We want you use as long as you can pay electricity, you can pay us. So it's just like electricity and water bill. So I think a good technology, it has to be come as a utility. So yes, I want to spend another a couple of minutes on what we envision, what free trade trend can help you to benefit from how you can benefit from our solutions. I mean, cross-border, as Terry explained, and I think if any of you guys work in the cross-border e-commerce, you know it's a pain in the ass, right? So, but we want to achieve 3 goals. First of all, we want to cut those middlemen which hinder the whole process, who drag the process. So we want to use the technology to cut the middleman. So we create a very revolutionary business model that for the suppliers, I think most of us here are suppliers, increase your revenue by 100%. Reduce the price when the Chinese merchant come to the consumer by 50%. And be able to access to this 100 million middle class, and we call this millennium age, the youth generation, through WeChat, through Alipay, through the social networks. And so that's what we want to achieve. And we also want to invent a financial instrument, as Terry just explained, but we won't be able to go through the details as the vendor-based finance to streamline the whole process. To put it very simply, we want the whole business just like Afterpay. So we take the Afterpay business, but be able to have the China to access, to streamline the whole China, to be able to access to this vast consumer base in the Chinese market. And most importantly, we have a dream. We want to create another 10,000 jobs in Australia in the next 3 to 5 years. Obviously, this is we can't do this by ourselves. So we offer the whole platform as open platform and open technologies. And we invite all of you to work with us. Together we can create a better future. Thank you.
Anyone got a question from Bob?
What's the basis of the token?
It's still under intensive discussions, but our idea is to offer Thunder as a token. So, which means everybody can participate, and the more you contribute, the more you earn. So I think we are
Okay. Thank you. So we've now got to the stage where we're about to break for drinks and food, and I'd like to thank everybody who made a contribution. I'd also point out, though, that the project Tongbo has just spoken about is backed by some very significant companies in China. If you know those companies, you know that they are very serious players. So thank you very much. Food and drinks are over there. 2 points. One is that the drinks are from a company called Bull and Bull, who are an Adelaide-based winery who have a warehouse in Guangdong. and are very successful in the Chinese market. And secondly, the Australia-China Business Council at 6 p.m. this evening will be running another seminar here regarding a case study of a very successful Australian small company in China. They're the people who did Bobby the Bear, which is the lavender bear. So if you want to stick around until 6 o'clock, please feel free and then attend that seminar. So thank you. Let's go and have something to drink and eat.